If you manage to fix this engine, I'll marry you." Sarah Wellington, the female CEO, laughed. The humble mechanic, Jake Morrison, grinned and got to work. Before we dive in, it's so inspiring to see this tight-knit community grow. Feel free to introduce yourself in the comments below. The October rain pounded relentlessly against the windshield of Sarah's sleek Mercedes as it came to a sputtering halt. Along Route 47, a mere 3 miles outside of Millbrook, steam billowed from under the hood like the breath of a furious dragon. At 33, Sarah had built Wellington Foods from a modest family-run bakery into a massive, multi-million-dollar empire, but right now she felt entirely powerless. "Perfect," she muttered under her breath, her designer heels clicking against the wet asphalt as she stepped out of the car. Her tailored suit was drenched within seconds, and ahead, a rusty sign caught her eye. It read, "Morrison's Auto Repair. Fair prices, honest work." The garage emitted the familiar sense of motor oil mixed with the faint aroma of coffee. From underneath a dusty pickup truck emerged Jake Morrison, wiping his grease-stained hands on his blue coveralls. At 29, Jake had kind eyes that belied his age, and his dark hair was tousled while a stubbled jawline gave him a rugged look. "Trouble with the engine?" Jake asked, his voice warm despite the lateness of the hour. "It just died," Sarah replied, crossing her arms to shield herself from the cold. "I have a crucial board meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow in Chicago. This can't be happening now." Jake grabbed his tools and followed her outside, where, under the hood, he quickly identified the issue. "Your cooling system shot, the radiators cracked, and the water pumps failing. This isn't going to be a quick fix." Sarah's phone buzzed incessantly with urgent messages from her assistant. Quarterly reports, merger negotiations, investors on edge, everything piled up. "How long will it take?" she asked, her voice strained. 2 days, maybe 3, Jake said, his eyes focused on the engine. "I'll need to order parts." "I'll pay double for overnight shipping," Sarah insisted, her mind already racing through options. Jake studied her face, sensing her desperation beneath the surface. "Money won't speed things up, ma'am." "Some jobs just take time," he replied, closing the hood with a firm but quiet finality. Frustration bubbled inside Sarah like the pressure in an overworked steam engine. She couldn't believe it. In her world, everything had a price problems. Didn't stand a chance against the right amount of money, the right connections, and the right pressure applied in the right places. "Listen, I'll be honest with you," she said, rainwater dripping from her perfectly styled blonde hair. "I'm desperate. I've got 300 employees depending on decisions I make tomorrow. If you can get this car fixed by morning, I'll pay you $10,000. Jake raised an eyebrow. "That's more than I make in 4 months, he paused, thinking it over. "But we have a deal." Sarah was surprised. "Really?" "Lady, I could use that money more than you can imagine. But I can't perform miracles. This engine needs real work, not wishful thinking." Sarah scrolled frantically through her phone, searching for any possible way to get her car back on the road. Private jets, helicopter services, whatever it took. But Millbrook was too small, too isolated. There were no quick solutions here. "There's a motel just down the road," Jake offered quietly. "Clean rooms, decent coffee." Sometimes life forces us to slow down. As if to emphasize his point, a small voice rang out from inside the garage. "Daddy, is someone out there?" A little girl appeared in the doorway, clutching a tattered teddy bear. Emma Morrison, at just 5 years old, had her father's dark eyes and a face full of innocence. She wore pink pajamas adorned with unicorns and rainbow slippers. "Emma, sweetie, go back inside." "It's late," Jake said gently, his voice tender. "I heard voices. Are you fixing someone's car?" Emma asked, Her curiosity bright. Sarah watched the exchange, a soft pang in her chest. When was the last time someone had looked at her with such pure love and trust? "This is Miss—" "Sorry, I didn't catch your name," Jake said, raising his head. Sarah Wellington." Emma stepped forward shyly, her small voice filled with certainty. "Miss Sarah, Daddy's the best mechanic in the whole world. He can fix anything." Jake shot her a look, but Emma continued. "He fixed Mr. Peterson's tractor that nobody else could, and Mrs. Chun's van that was making scary noises. And he even fixed my bicycle when the chain came off, and I cried because I thought it was broken forever." Sarah couldn't help but smile for the first time in days. "He sounds pretty amazing." "He is," Emma nodded, beaming proudly. "Daddy, show Miss Sarah how you can make the engine sing." Jake's cheeks turned a little pink. "That's enough, sweetheart. Miss Sarah needs to get to her motel." But Sarah didn't move. There was something about this small family and their humble garage that felt more real than her entire empire. She cleared her throat and asked, "Maybe I could trouble you for that coffee you mentioned?" The garage's small office felt like stepping into another world. Emma insisted on making Sarah the best hot chocolate ever while Jake prepared coffee in a pot that had definitely seen better decades. Family photos covered the bulletin board. Jake and Emma at the county fair, building a snowman together, reading on the porch swing. "Where's her mother?" Sarah asked quietly while Emma arranged marshmallows in perfect patterns. Jake's jaw tightened. "Linda left 3 years ago. Sighed she couldn't handle the small-town life anymore. Wanted excitement, opportunities. Haven't heard from her since." Sarah studied the photos more carefully. In the earlier ones, a young woman with strawberry blonde hair stood beside Jake, but her smile always seemed a little forced, and her eyes appeared distant even then. "I'm sorry," Sarah said softly, "and Emma barely remembers her. Sometimes." "I think that's a blessing," Jake said, watching his daughter with fierce protectiveness. "We do just fine on our own." Emma returned with a steaming mug of hot chocolate, topped with marshmallows arranged like flower petals. "For you, Miss Sarah. Daddy taught me the recipe." The hot chocolate was surprisingly delicious, rich and creamy with a hint of vanilla. "This is wonderful, Emma. Thank you." "Daddy makes the best everything," Emma declared with pride. "He makes pancakes that look like animals, and he sings songs that make me laugh when I'm scared of thunder. And he reads me stories with different voices for all the characters." Sarah smiled warmly. She asked, "What kind of stories?" "Princes." "Stories, but not boring ones," Emma explained. "Like the princes who fought dragons, and the one who became a pirate captain, and the one who could talk to animals." Jake rubbed the back of his neck, slightly embarrassed. "Emma has a big imagination." "That's wonderful," Sarah said, remembering her own childhood. Her father had been too busy building the company to read bedtime stories. Her mother had hired nannies for those kinds of things. "What kind of work do you do, Miss Sarah?" Emma asked, looking up at her curiously. "I run a food company," Sarah replied. "We make snacks and meals you can buy in stores." Emma's eyes widened. "Like cookies?" "Yes, like cookies." "But I don't make them myself," Sarah laughed. "I have other people who do the cooking. I mostly sit in meetings and make decisions." "That sounds boring," Emma said matter-of-factly. Jake chuckled, but Sarah raised her hand. "She's not wrong. It can be boring sometimes." "This feels much more interesting," Sarah said, taking in the mismatched furniture and Emma's. "Drawings taped to the walls. Daddy's going to teach me about engines when I'm bigger," Emma announced proudly. "But first, I have to learn my letters and numbers really good." "Really well," Jake corrected gently. "Really well," Emma repeated, making sure she got it right. "Daddy helps me with homework every night after dinner," Emma added proudly. Sarah watched Jake's face soften as he looked at his daughter. When had anyone ever looked at her like that? How old were you when you started working on cars? Sarah asked Jake. 12, he replied. My dad owned this place before me. He started me off changing oil, checking tire pressure. Said if I was going to inherit the business one day, I'd better understand it from the ground up. Do you miss him? Every day, Jake said quietly. He passed away when Emma was 2. A heart attack, right by the hydraulic lift. Emma leaned against her father's leg, and Jake's voice caught slightly. He would have loved watching her grow up. Emma whispered, Daddy says Grandpa Joe is watching from heaven, and that's why the tools always end up where we need them, even when we can't remember where we put them. Sarah's throat tightened unexpectedly. That's a beautiful way to think about it. What was your childhood like? Emma asked with her characteristic directness. Sarah hesitated. How to explain boarding schools and nannies? Summers at the country club instead of swimming holes. Birthday parties plan to be event coordinators rather than loving parents. Very different from Daddy's, she said carefully. I lived in a big house in Chicago, and I went to schools where I wore uniforms and had to study very hard. Did you have friends? Some, but I moved around a lot. It was hard to keep friends. Emma's face scrunched up in sympathy. That sounds lonely. Sometimes it was, Sarah admitted, surprised by her own honesty. Jake was listening quietly, his expression thoughtful. Is that why you work so hard now? To prove something? The question hit closer to home than Sarah was comfortable with. I work hard because that's what it takes to succeed. But succeed at what? Building something that lasts. Making my mark. Proving that I can take my family's small bakery and turn it into something significant. Proving to who? Sarah fell silent because the truth was too raw to speak aloud. Proving to her father, who died 5 years ago, still disappointed that she'd never married, never given him grandchildren. Proving to herself Fetch was worth something beyond her family name and inherited money. My daddy says the most important thing is being happy with who you are, Emma said softly. And helping other people be happy too. Your daddy is very wise, Sarah managed. He learned it from his daddy, and his daddy learned it from his daddy. Daddy says good things get passed down through families like recipes or songs or ways of being kind. Sarah thought about what had been passed down in her family. Ambition certainly fed drive to achieve, but kindness, contentment, the ability to find joy in simple moments. I should check on the parts delivery, Jake said, standing and brushing dust from his jeans. As he walked into the garage, Emma moved closer to Sarah on the step. Miss Sarah, can I tell you a secret? Of course. I think Daddy likes you. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. What makes you say that? He smiles different when you're here, like when he's really happy, but trying not to show it too much. And he keeps making sure his hair looks nice, which he only does for church or when we go to town for something special. Sarah found herself smiling despite her nervousness. And how do you feel about that? Emma considered this seriously. I think it would be nice if Daddy had a friend who made him smile like that. He gets lonely sometimes, even though he tries to hide it from me. How do you know? Sometimes when he thinks I'm asleep, I hear him talking to Mama's picture. He tells her about me, about how I'm growing up, about things that happen. He sounds sad. When he does it, Sarah's heart clenched. Do you miss your mama? Emma shrugged with 5-year-old philosophy. You can't miss a me and you don't really remember. But I think Daddy misses her for both of us. Jake emerged from the garage, phone in hand. Parts will be here in 2 hours. It should have you back on the road by evening. Evening? Sarah repeated and was surprised to find the prospect less appealing than it should have been. You sound disappointed, Jake observed with a small smile. No, yes, maybe. This has been. She gestured helplessly at the garage, at Emma, at the simple warmth of their company. I can't remember the last time I felt this relaxed. Maybe Thatch'll tell you something." Before Sarah could respond, a sleek black BMW pulled into the lot, looking as out of place as a peacock in a chicken coop. Sarah's stomach dropped as she recognized the driver. "Oh no," she whispered. Richard Henderson, her chief rival on the board, emerged from the car with his characteristic predatory smile. Silver-haired and sharp-suited, he looked around the humble garage with barely concealed disdain. "Sarah, darling," he called out, his voice carrying false warmth. "Found you at last. When you missed the board meeting, I grew concerned about your well-being." Emma instinctively moved closer to her father, sensing tension, even if she didn't understand it. "Hello, Richard," Sarah said, standing slow. "I wasn't aware my location was company business. When the Sia disappears for 3 days without explanation, it becomes everyone's business." His gaze moved dismissively over Jake and Emma. "I see you've been slumming." Sarah felt anger flare hot and protective. "These people have shown me more genuine kindness in 3 days than I've seen in 3 years of board meetings." Richard's smile sharpened. "How quaint. But kindness doesn't run a corporation, Sarah. The board is voting Thursday on your leadership. I wanted to give you the courtesy of a heads up." The word shit like a physical blow, but Sarah kept her expression neutral. Years off corporate warfare had taught her never to show weakness in front of predators. "I'll be there," she said simply. "Good. Oh, and Sarah, you might want to prepare a succession plan just in case." Richard's gaze lingered insultingly on Jake before he slid back into his BMW and drove away. In the silence that followed, Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Miss Sarah, are you okay? You look scared." Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, forcing a smile. "I'm okay, sweetheart. That man is he doesn't understand about kindness like you and your daddy do." But inside, reality was crashing back like a cold wave. Her world, her life, everything she'd built, it was all hanging by a thread. And she was here playing house with a small-town mechanic and his daughter instead of fighting for her survival. The fairy tale was over. It was time to go home. Jake worked on Sarah's Mercedes with focused intensity, his movements efficient and sure, despite the tension that had settled over them since Henderson's visit. Emma sat nearby, unusually quiet, sensing the shift in mood, even if she didn't understand its cause. "The cooling system's completely rebuilt," Jake announced as he lowered the hood. "New radiator, new water pump, new hoses. She run better than before." Sarah nodded, checking her phone for the dozenth time. "Thank you. Send meth bill, Sarah." Jake started, then stopped, wiping his hands on a raging hiss. "What?" "Nothing." "It's not my place. Say it." Jake looked at Emma, then back at Sarah. "Is it worth it? All of it. The stress, the fighting, the loneliness. It's my life," Sarah said defensively. "It's what I've worked for. But is it what you want?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Sarah thought about her empty penthouse apartment, the silent dinners eaten standing at her kitchen counter while reviewing reports, the success that felt hollow, the achievements that nobody celebrated with her. "Miss Sarah," Emma said quietly, "are you going to be okay when you go back to those mean people?" Sarah knelt down, taking Emma's small hands in hers. "I'll be fine, sweetheart. I've been dealing with mean people for a long time." "But you don't have to," Emma said with simple logic. "You could stay here. Daddy could use help with the business, and I could show you all the best places in town, and we could teach you to fish and make pancakes and find 4-leaf clovers." The offer, delivered with sickiness and hope, nearly broke Sarah's heart. "Oh, honey, it's not that simple." "Why not?" Because Sarah struggled for words. "Because I have responsibilities, people depending on me, a company to run." "But you're not happy there," Emma persisted. "I can tell you smile more here, you laugh more." And you don't look at your phone every 5 minutes like it's going to bite you. Jake stepped forward. Emma, Miss Sarah has to go back to her life. We can't ask her to change everything just because we've enjoyed having her here. But his eyes told a different story. In them, Sarah saw longing and possibility and the same pull she'd been feeling toward this gentle man and his extraordinary daughter. If you could do anything, Sarah heard herself asking, what would it be if money weren't an object? If you could live anywhere, be anything? Jake considered the question seriously. I'd want to expand the garage, hire a couple more mechanics so the town would have better automotive services. Maybe add a training program for kids who want to learn the trade but can't afford technical school. He paused, and I'd want Emma to have more opportunity as Millbrook can offer. Good schools, music lessons if she wanted them, the chance to see the world. What about you? What would you want for yourself? Honestly, I'd want to not worry about money every month. To know that Emma's college fund is secure, that we could handle a medical emergency without losing everything. Jake's voice softened. And maybe I'd want to find someone to share it all with, someone who loved Emma as much as I do. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and pain. Sarah, Jake said quietly, when that man showed up today, when he talked about your board meeting and succession plans, I saw fear in your eyes. Real fear. What happens if you lose? I start over, Sarah said automatically. Find another company, another challenge. Is that what you want? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma arrange small stones in careful patterns on the garage floor. I don't know anymore. 3 days ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now I wonder if I've been climbing the wrong mountain all along. Jake stepped closer, his voice gentle. So climb a different one. It's not that easy, isn't it? You're Sarah Wellington. You built $1 million company from scratch. If anyone can reinvent their life, it's you. Emma looked up from her stones. Miss Sarah, remember what I told you about Princess Whiskers? About how trust takes time, but it's worth waiting for. I remember. Maybe brave people aren't just people who do the right thing when they're rescued. Maybe they're people who choose. Love even when it's scary and different and not what they planned. The wisdom of it coming from a 5-year-old hit Sarah like a revelation. How long had she been choosing safety over love, control over connection, success over happiness? Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. Emergency board meeting moved to tomorrow at 9 a.m. Henderson pushing hard for vote of no confidence. You need to be here. She stared at the screen, then at Jake, then at Emma with her stones and her hope and her innocent belief that love could conquer practical concerns. I have to go, Sarah said quietly. Emma's face fell. Right now? Tonight? There's an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow. Will you come back? Emma asked, her voice small. Sarah looked at Jake, seeing her own uncertainty reflected in his eyes. I don't know, sweetheart. I honestly don't now. As Sarah walked toward her repaired Mercedes, Jake called after her. Sarah, whatever happens tomorrow, remember that you're worth more than what you accomplish. You're worth more than what they think of you. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice, and drove away from the best 3 days of her adult life toward a battle that will determine everything she thought she wanted. But as Millbrook disappeared in her rearview mirror, all she could think about was a little girl's laughter and a good man's gentle hands and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was a different way to live. The question was whether she was brave enough to choose it. The Wellington Foods boardroom on the 42nd floor of the Millennium Tower felt like a battlefield at dawn. Sarah arrived 30 minutes early, needing time to armor herself for what was coming. The October morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the polished mahogany table where 12 board members would decide her fate. Her reflection in the conference room glass showed no trace of the woman who'd laughed with a 5-year-old over hot chocolate just 18 hours ago. The tailored Armani suit, the perfectly styled hair, the diamond earrings that cost more than Jake's monthly income. All of it felt like a costume now. Sarah. Richard Henderson entered with his usual predatory smile, followed by 3 other board members who'd clearly been briefed. "So good of you to join us, Richard." She kept her voice level. "Professional. Gentlemen." 1by1, the others arrived. Sarah watched their faces, reading the room with skills honed over years off corporate warfare. Patterson was neutral, waiting to see which way the wind blew. Yamamoto looked disappointed but not hostile. Chun seemed sympathetic but weak. The others, Henderson, had been busy. "Before we begin," Sarah announced as the last member took his seat, "I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I missed Tuesday's board meeting due to a mechanical emergency. No, it was not planned. And no, it does not indicate any inability to lead this company." Henderson leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "A mechanical emergency that lasted 3 days. Come now, Sarah. We're all adults here. My car broke down in a small town 3 hours outside Chicago. The repairs took longer than expected. I handled all urgent business remotely." "Except you didn't," Henderson said smoothly, sliding a folder across the table. "The Yamamoto distribution deal they pulled out yesterday morning because our CEO was unreachable during critical negotiations." Sarah felt the words hit like physical blows but kept her expression neutral. "Temporary setback. We can rebuild that relationship, can we?" Our stock price dropped 8% when news leaked that our CEO had simply vanished. The financial press is already speculating about instability in leadership. Around the table, Sarah saw doubt creeping into previously supportive faces. This was Henderson's game, and he played it masterfully. Death by 1,000 small cuts. Each fact technically true, but stripped off context. "I propose," Henderson continued, "that we consider a leadership transient. Nothing personal, Sarah. Simply what's best for the company your father built." The mention of her father was calculated cruelty, and Henderson knew it. James Wellington had built this company from a single bakery, and the weight of his legacy had driven Sarah for 15 years. "The company my father built," Sarah repeated slowly, "was never just about profits. It was about feeding families, creating jobs, being part of communities. When did we lose sight of that? When we became a publicly traded corporation with fiduciary duties to shareholders," Henderson replied coldly. "And what about duties to employees? To the communities where our factories operate? To the idea that business can be force for good?" Patterson shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah, this is all very idealistic, but is it?" Sarah stood, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. "In the past 3 days, I met a man who rebuilds engines because people need transportation to get to work, to talk their children to school, to live their lives. He charges fair prices, douchinist work, and builds real relationships with his customers. His 5-year-old daughter understands community better than this entire room." "How touching," Henderson said with barely concealed contempt. "But we're not running a charity." Sarah turned back to face the board, and something had shifted in her bearing. The armor was stealthier, but beneath it was something new. Or perhaps something very old that she'd almost forgotten. "No, we're not. We're running a food company." But when did feeding people become just about maximizing profit margins? When did growth become more important than the good we could do? "Sarah," Yamamoto spoke for the first time, his voice gentle but firm. "These are beautiful sentiments, but sentiment doesn't protect shareholder value, doesn't it?" Sarah moved back to the table, but didn't sit. What if I told you I had a proposal that could increase our community impact, improve employee satisfaction, and potentially open new market segments? Henderson's eyes narrowed. I'd say you're grasping at straws. 3 months ago, you all approved my proposal to expand into the Midwest market. Small towns, rural communities, places that have been overlooked by major food distributors. What if instead of just extracting profit from those communities, we invested in them? Meaning what exactly? Chun asked. Sarah felt her heart racing, but her voice remained steady. Mobile distribution centers, local hiring initiatives, partnerships with small-town business. Instead of forcing them to adapt to our corporate model, we adapt to their needs. Expensive, Patterson observed initially, but consider the long-term benefits. Brand loyalty in underserved markets, positive press coverage, government contracts for rural development programs, and most importantly, sustainable growth based on real relationships rather than just market dominance. Henderson laughed, viewed it. Sounded forced. You want to turn Wellington Foods into some kind of small-town nonprofit? I want to turn Wellington Foods into a company my father would still recognize. A company that remembers where it came from. Silence fell over the room. Sarah could see the board members wrestling with her words, trying to reconcile corporate temperamentism with something deeper they'd perhaps forgotten they once believed in. It's an interesting proposal, Yamamoto said finally, but hardly relevant to the current crisis of leadership, isn't it? Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolling to the photos she'd taken in Millbrook. This is Morrison's Auto Repair. One employee, the owner, serves a community of 3,000 people, customer satisfaction rating of 98%, zero employee turnover, profitable every year for 25 years. She showed the man other photo, Emma's drawing that she'd secretly photographed. A crayon picture of her father fixing cars with the words, "My daddy helps people," written in careful 5-year-old handwriting. This little girl understands something we've forgotten. Business isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about people helping people. And maybe, just maybe, that's not weakness. Maybe that is the strongest foundation a company can build on. Henderson's smile had turned ugly. This is exactly the kind of scattered thinking that led to our current crisis. Sarah, you're clearly having some kind of emotional breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying new strength. For the first time in years, I remember why I wanted to lead this company in the first place. The board meeting recessed for lunch, and Sarah found herself alone on the executive floor, staring out at the Chicago skyline. Her phone had been buzzing, with texts from her assistant, from reporters, from colleagues who'd heard rumors about the leadership vote. But only call she wanted to make was to a small garage in Millbrook. Morrison's Auto Repair. Jake's familiar voice answered on the second ring. It's Sarah. A pause. How did it go? It's not over yet. We reconvene in an hour. Sarah leaned against the window, pressing her forehead to the cool glass. Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Always. If I came back. If I left all this and came back to Millbrook, would there be room for me? Not just in your life, but in the community. Could a woman who spent 15 years in corporate boardrooms find a place in a town of 3,000 people? Another pause. Longer this time. Sarah, you can make a decision like that based on 3 days. That's not what I asked. Jake's voice softened. You want to know if we'd welcome you? If you'd fit in? Honey, you charmed every person you met at that diner. Emma hasn't stopped talking about you since you left. And me? He trailed off. What about you? I've been thinking about you every minute since you drove away. Wondering if I dreamed the whole thing. Wondering if a woman like you could really find happiness with a man like me. Sarah closed her eyes. A man like you? Jake, You're the most genuine person I've ever met. You're raising an incredible daughter. You help your neighbors. You do honest work that matters. What more could anyone want? Money, security, the kind of life you're used to. The kind of life I'm used to is empty, Jake. Beautiful and successful and completely empty. Miss Sarah, Emma's voice, came through the phone, small and hopeful. Hi, sweetheart. Are you coming home? The word home hit Sarah like a physical blow. When had anywhere last felt like home? I don't know yet, honey. I'm still figuring things out. Daddy's been sad since you left. He tries to hide it, but I can tell. Emma. Jake's voice warned gently. It's true, Daddy. You keep looking at the road like you're waiting for her car to come back. Sarah felt tears threatening. Emma, can I tell you something? You and your daddy are the best things that have happened to me in longer than I can remember. If I do come back, it won't be because I'm running away from something. It'll be because I'm running toward the life I should have been living all along. Promise? I promise. After she hung up, Sarah sat in the empty conference room, staring at the agenda for the afternoon session. Leadership transition, vote of confidence, succession planning. The clinical language couldn't disguise what was happening. They were going to fire her dad, and maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hope your meeting goes well. Remember what I told you about trust, love, Princess Whiskers, aka Emma. Sarah laughed. Out loud, a sound that echoed strangely in the corporate silence. Jake must have helped Emma send it, which meant he was thinking about her too. Henderson returned first, his confidence evident in every step. I hope you've used Thebrick to consider your position, Sarah. A graceful resignation would be better for everyone, would it? Sarah turned from the window and Henderson stepped back slightly at the look in her eyes. Better for whom? The employees whose jobs you'll cut to improve profit margins? The communities you'll abandon when tax incentives expire? The companiculture you'll gut in the name of efficiency? I'll do what's necessary to maximize shareholder value, and I'll do what's necessary to save the soul of this company. The other board members filed in their faces carefully neutral. Sarah took her seat at the head of the table, but she no longer felt like she was fighting for her position. She was fighting for something bigger. Gentlemen, she began, I want to read you something. She pulled out her phone and found the email she drafted during the break, her resignation letter. But instead of reading it, she deleted it and looked up at the assembled faces. Actually, let me tell you a story instead. About a little girl who believes her father is a hero because he helps people. About a man who works 16-hour days not to get rich, but to take care of his daughter and serve his community. About a place where people still look out for each other, where success is measured not just in profit, but in the good you do. Henderson rolled his eyes. Sarah, please. We have serious business to discuss. This is serious business, Richard. The most serious because I'm proposing we take Wellington Foods in a completely new direction. Not just profit-driven, but purpose-driven. Not just extracting value from communities, but creating it. She outlined her plan in detail. Regional distribution centers staffed by local hires, partnerships with small-town businesses, investment in rural infrastructure, a complete shift from corporate dominance to community partnership. It's ambitious, she concluded. It's risky. It requires us to think beyond quarterly earnings and consider our legacy. But I believe it's exactly what this company needs to not just survive, but thrive for the next 50 years. Patterson leaned forward. And you'd lead this initiative personally. I'd oversee it. Yes, from a new base of operations. Millbrook, Illinois would become a Midwest regional headquarters. Henderson's face darkened. You want to move company operations to some backwater town because you've developed a crush on a mechanic? Few words were meant to wound, to reduce her proposal to something small and personal. But Sarah felt only clarity. "You want to move company operations to a community that understands what we should have been all along. And yes, Richard, I have feelings for someone there. Someone who's taught me more about real leadership in 3 days than ill-earned in 15 years of corporate climbing." She stood again, meeting each board member's eyes. "You can vote me out today." "You probably will. But before you do, ask yourselves this. When was the last time any of you felt proud of what we accomplish here? When did you last go home excited to tell your family about the good work you'd done?" The room fell silent. Sarah gathered her papers, her decision crystallizing with each heartbeat. "I hereby submit my resignation as CEO of Wellington Foods, effective immediately, but I also submit a formal proposal to purchase the Midwest Division, including all planned rural expansion at market value." Henderson's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious, completely serious." "I'm going to build the company my father dreamed of, just not from this boardroom." Sarah's penthouse apartment felt like a museum. After Millbrooks lived in warmth, she moved through rooms filled with expensive furniture and carefully curated art, packing only what mattered. Surprisingly, little met that criteria. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since news of her resignation hit the financial press. Reporters, headhunters, competitors wanting to know her plans. She ignored them all, focusing on the legal documents spread across her dining table. The buyout proposal was complex but doable. Her personnel investment portfolio, built over 15 years of careful savings and stock options, would cover the purchase price with enough left over for initial operating capital. It meant giving up the penthouse, the vacation homes, the carefully constructed luxury that had defined her adult life. It also meant freedom. Sarah, her assistant Melissa, appeared in the doorway, looking shell-shocked. "The lawyers are here to review the purchase agreement." For the next 4 hours, Sarah sat with attorneys and accountants, hammering out details that would reshape her entire existence. The Midwest Division included 12 distribution centers, 2 processing plants, and contracts, with over 300 suppliers. It was a substantial operation, but small enough to run with a personal touch. "You understand," her lawyer cautioned. "This is essentially starting over. No corporate safety net, no board to share responsibility. Success or failure rests entirely on you." "I understand," Sarah said, signing final documents. "I'm counting on it." By evening, the deal was structured. Wellington Foods would retain the Chicago headquarters and major operations. Sarah Wellington would acquire Wellington Midwest, becoming an independent distributor with exclusive rights to serve rural markets across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa. She celebrated with takeout Chinese food eaten standing at her kitchen counter, then called the one person who would understand. "You did it." Jake's voice carried wonder and pride. "You actually did it. I did something." Whether it was smart remains to be seen. Smart, Sarah. You just bet everything on building something meaningful instead of just profitable. That's the smartest thing I've heard in years. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "I've never run a business without a board, without corporate support systems." "What if I fail?" "Then you'll figure it out and try again." "That's what brave people do." Emma's voice piped up in the background. "Is that Miss Sarah? Can I talk to her?" A moment later, Emma was on the phone. "Miss Sarah, Daddy told me you're coming back." "Is it true?" "It's true, sweetheart. I'll be there by the weekend." Forever. Sarah looked around her. Empty apartment at the life she was leaving behind. Forever? Emma squealed with delight, and Sarah heard Jake laughing in the background. For the first time in months, maybe years, everything felt exactly right. "Miss Sarah, we have a surprise for you when you get here." "What kind of surprise?" "I can't tell you. It's a secret, but Daddy helped me make it, and it's really, really good." After Thea hung up, Sarah finished packing. The moving company would handle the furniture donations and storage. She was driving back to Millbrook with just her clothes, her laptop, and a small box of photos, most of them taken in the past week. Her phone buzzed with a text from Henderson. "You'll be back within 6 months begging for your old job." Small-town romance doesn't pay the bills. Sarah deleted the message without responding. Some bridges were worth burning. Instead, she called her real estate agent about putting the penthouse on the market, then spent the evening researching office space in Millbrook. The old bank building on Main Street was available, complete with a drive-through that could serve as a distribution point for local deliveries. As she fell asleep for the last time in her Chicago bedroom, Sarah's last thought was of Emma's laughter and Jake's gentle hands and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she was about to discover what happiness actually felt like. Sarah arrived in Millbrook on Saturday morning to find the entire town seemingly gathered around Morrison's auto repair. Colorful balloons bobbed in the autumn breeze, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. A handmade banner strung between two posts read, "Welcome home, Miss Sarah." Emma spotted her first, breaking away from a group of children and running toward the car with arms outstretched. "Miss Sarah, you came back. You really came back." Sarah caught the little girl in a fierce hug, feeling tears spring to her eyes. "I promised I would. Look." Emma grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the garage. "Everyone wanted to meet you. Daddy told them about how you're going to help our town, and Mrs. Patterson made her famous apple pie, and Mr. Chun brought his special dumplings, and the whole place is like a party." Jake appeared at her side, his smile soft and wondering. "I hope you didn't mind. When word got out that you were moving here, people wanted to show their appreciation. Word got out how?" Jake's cheeks wrinkled. "Emma might have told everyone at the grocery store yesterday and the post office and Mrs. Rodriguez at the diner." "I was excited," Emma protested. "I told them Miss Sarah was going to bring jobs and help the town and maybe marry Daddy." "Emma." Jake and Sarah said simultaneously, both blushing furiously. An elderly woman approached, her silver hair perfectly styled and her smile warm. "You must be Sarah. I'm Margaret Patterson, Emma's kindergarten teacher. We can't thank you enough for choosing our little town." Before Sarah could respond, she was surrounded by introductions. The Hendersons, who ran the general store, the Chuns from the Chinese restaurant, Dr. Martinez, who served as the town's only physician, Pastor Williams from the Methodist Church. Each person had a story about Jake, how he'd helped them, supported them, gone above and beyond to serve the community. "He replaced my transmission for parts cost only when I lost my job," shared Tom Peterson, a weathered farmer. "Wouldn't take a penny. For labor. Fixed our delivery van in the middle of a blizzard so we could keep the senior meals program running," added Maria Santos from the community center. "Taught me son everything he knows about engines," said another man. "Boys at trade school now full scholarship." Sarah looked at Jake with new understanding. This wasn't just a mechanic who helped people. This was the heart of the community, the person everyone turned to when life went wrong. Speech, some echoed out, and the cry was taken up by others. "Speech, speech." Sarah found herself gently pushed toward a makeshift platform. Actually, just Jake's workbench with a board laid across it. The crowd gathered around, faces expectant and kind. Sarah began, then stopped, overwhelmed by the genuine warmth surrounding her. "I'm not sure what to say. 3 weeks ago, I didn't even know Millbrook existed. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. "I came here by accident, broken down and stranded. But Jake and Emma didn't just fix my car. They reminded me what community looks like, what it means to help people, not because you have to, but because you want to." She found Jake's face in the crowd saw Emma beaming beside him. I've spent my entire career in corporate boardrooms, making decisions that affected thousands of people I'd never meet. But here, I see the faces of the people my decisions will impact. I see Mrs. Patterson, who's been teaching children for 30 years. I see Dr. Martinez, who makes house calls because some of his patients can't afford office visits. I see all of you building something beautiful together. The crowd was silent now, listening intently. Wellington Midwest isn't going to be just another company extracting profit from rural communities. It's going to be a partnership. We'll heroically source locally when possible and invest our profits back into the places that support us. Because that's what Jake taught me. That success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about what you give back. The applause was thunderous for such a small crowd. Sarah stepped down from the makeshift platform and was immediately surrounded by people wanting to shake her hand, share their ideas, volunteer their help. There's an old hardware store on Oak Street that would make perfect office space, offered Mrs. Henderson. My nephew's looking for work good with computers and logistics, added someone else. The Historical Society has been collecting stories about local farms and businesses. Might help with your sourcing plans, suggested Pastor Williams. For 2 hours, Sarah found herself in impromptu planning sessions, learning about the town's resources, needs, and dreams. It was like the best brainstorming session of her corporate career, except everyone genuinely cared about the outcome. As the crowd began talking, Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Miss Sarah, want to see the real surprise now? She led Sarah and Jake behind the garage to a small garden area Sarah hadn't noticed before. There, painted on the side of the building in careful multicolored letters, was a mural that took Sarah's breath away. It showed the town of Millbrook from above with the Main Street businesses, the school, the park, and the garage. But in the center was a new building labeled Wellington Midwest with tiny painted figures of people working together, carrying boxes, shaking hands. Daddy helped me paint it, Emma said proudly. It's our town with your company making everything better. Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, too moved to speak. The mural was primitive and childlike, but it captured something no corporate logo ever had. Hope, community, the belief that business could be a force for good. Do you like it? Emma asked, anxiously. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Sarah managed. Emma beamed and threw her arms around Sarah's neck. Now you really have to stay forever because your building is painted on our wall. Over Emma's shoulder, Sarah met Jake's eyes. In them, she saw love and pride and the promise of everything she'd been searching for without knowing it. Forever sounds perfect, she whispered 3 months later. Sarah stood in the converted bank building that now housed Wellington Midwest's headquarters, watching Emma carefully arrange fresh flowers in the reception area of Oz. It had become the little girl's self-appointed job, bringing bouquets from the community garden every Monday morning before school. The yellow ones are for happiness, Emma explained seriously. And the purple ones are for wisdom, and the white ones are because they're pretty. Very scientific, Sarah agreed, helping Emma reach the towel vase. The business had grown faster than Sarah's most optimistic projections. Word of Wellington Midwest's community-focused approach had spread throughout rural Illinois, and orders were coming in from towns eager to work with a company that understood their needs. They'd hired 8 full-time employees so far, all locals recommended by town residents. Mary Peterson handled logistics from her small office in the converted vault. Tom Chun managed supplier relationships, leveraging his family's connections throughout the region. Dr. Martinez's daughter, Angela, had proved brilliant at customer service, her medical school background helping her understand the nutritional needs of different communities. Miss Sarah, Emma finished with the flowers and settled into the small chair Sarah had placed by the front window. Are you nervous about tonight? A little, Sarah admitted. Tonight was the grand opening celebration for Wellington Midwest, and the entire town had been invited. It would be their formal introduction to the community as an official business, complete with a ribbon cutting and speeches from local officials. It would also be the night Jake had promised to ask her something important. Emma had been dropping hints for weeks with the subtlety of a 5-year-old. "Daddy's been practicing something in front of the mirror," she'd announced. "Daddy bought something shiny and hid it in his sock drawer. Daddy asked Pastor Williams about special ceremonies." Sarah was trying not to get her hopes up, but her heart raced every time she thought of both possibilities. "Miss Sarah," Emma's voice was unusually serious, "can I ask you something important?" "Of course, sweetheart. If Daddy asks you to marry him tonight, will you say yes?" Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. "Emma, you can't just ask someone that." "Why not?" "You want to know." "Because if you say yes, you'll be my almost mama. And I've been practicing calling you that in my head." The simple statement hit Sarah like a gentle earthquake. In all her dreams about a future with Jake, she'd thought about love and partnership and building a life together. But she hadn't fully processed what it would mean to become Emma's mother. Not just in law, but in the daily reality of lunchboxes and scraped knees and bedtime stories. "How would you feel about that?" Sarah asked carefully. "Having an almost mama." Emma considered this with characteristic seriousness. "I think it would be really good because Daddy tries to do everything, but sometimes he doesn't know about girl stuff. Like when I wanted to paint my nails, but we didn't fave the right colors, or when I asked him about why some mamas have babies in their tummies and some don't." Sarah sat down in the chair next to Emma's. "Those are important things to know about." And also, Daddy gets lonely sometimes, even though he tries to hide it. But since you came here, he smiles all the time, even when he thinks no one is looking. You're very observant. For 5 years old, I practice watching people's faces to see what they're really feeling. It helps me know when to give hugs. The wisdom of it floored Sarah. This little girl, who'd been essentially motherless since age 2, had developed an emotional intelligence that most adults never achieved. "Emma, can I tell you something?" "I love your daddy very much, and I love you very much too. If he asks me to marry him tonight, I will definitely say yes." Emma's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Really? Promise, promise." Emma launched herself into Sarah's arms for a fierce hug. "This is the best day ever. Wait until I tell Princess Whiskers." "You still call the cat Princess Whiskers?" "She likes it, and she lets me pet her now. Daddy says trust just takes time, but it's worth waiting for." The front door chimed and Jake walked in carrying takeout bags from Maggie's Diner. Lunch delivery for the hard-working businesswoman and her assistant. "Daddy." Emma ran to him, practically vibrating with excitement. "Guess what Miss Sarah just told me." Jake's eyes widened in alarm. "Emma, you didn't." "She said she loves us, both of us. And if you ask her to marry you tonight, she'll say yes." Jake groaned and covered his face with one hand. "Emma Rose Morrison, you were going to give me gray hair before." "I'm 30. Sorry, Daddy, but I had to know for planning purposes." Sarah couldn't help laughing at Jake's mortification. "It's okay." She was very professional about the whole thing. "Professional," Jake repeated weakly. "Very businesslike. She wanted to ensure optimal outcomes for all stakeholders." Emma nodded seriously. "That's exactly what I did." Jake looked between his daughter and the woman he loved, shaking his head in amazement. "I had this whole romantic plan, dinner, candles, the perfect moment." "And now," Sarah asked, stepping closer, "now I'm wondering why. I thought I needed anything more than this." He gestured around the office that had become their shared space, at Emma arranging her flowers at the life they'd built together. "Sarah Wellington in front of our daughter." "Our daughter?" Sarah's voice caught. Our daughter? Jake confirmed firmly. Will you marry me? Will you be my partner in business and life and raising this incredible little girl who thinks subtlety is overrated? Sarah didn't hesitate. Yes. Yes to Olafet. Emma cheered and clapped her hands as Jake produced a ring from his jacket pocket. Not the traditionaldium Sarah might have expected, but a simple band with a small emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. It was my grandmother's, Jake explained as he slipped it onto her finger. She always said emeralds were for new beginnings. It's perfect, Sarah whispered and meant it. As Jake kissed her in the afternoon light streaming through the windows of their shared dreams, Emma danced around them, singing an improvised song about weddings and families and how she was going to be the best flower girl ever. Outside, the town of Millbrook continued its quiet rhythm, unaware that in the old bank building on Main Street, three hearts had just aligned to create something beautiful and lasting and true. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the same spot where she'd first met Jake, but everything had changed. Morrison's Auto Repair had expanded into the adjacent building, now employing 4 mechanics and serving 3 counties. Wellington Midwest occupied the entire block of Main Street, with the old bank building as headquarters and 2 additional storefronts for local distribution and customer service. But the biggest change was in Sarah herself. Miss Sarah. Mama Sarah. Emma ran toward her, wearing a white dress with yellow flowers and clutching a basket of rose petals. Is it time? Is it really time? It's time, sweetheart. The autumn wedding Sarah had planned was small but perfect. The ceremony would take place in the community garden behind the Methodist church, followed by a reception in the high school gymnasium. Half the town was invited, which in Millbrook meant everyone was invited. You look beautiful, Jake said, appearing at her side in his navy suit. He'd been banished from seeing her that morning, according to tradition. But Emma had served as messenger between them, running back and forth with increasingly silly notes. You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Morrison. Soon to be Mr. Wellington Morrison, he corrected with a grin. They decided to hyphenate their names, a symbol of the partnership they'd built, not just in marriage, but in business. Wellington Midwest had exceeded every projection, becoming a model for community-focused commerce that was attracting attention from companies nationwide. Sarah had been invited to speak at conferences, write articles, consider a book about sustainable rural business practices. But today wasn't about business success or media attention. Today was about love and family and the promise they were making to each other and to Emma. Daddy, Mama Sarah, everyone's waiting. Emma tugged at their hands with 5-year-old impatience. She's been calling you Mama Sarah for months, Jake noted as they walked toward the garden. I think she's been more excited about this wedding than we have. Hard to imagine, Sarah laughed. I've been excited since the day you proposed. The garden was transformed with white chairs arranged in neat rows, an arch of autumn flowers at the front, and twinkling lights strung between the trees. As they approached, Sarah saw faces that had become dear over the past year, Mrs. Patterson with her proud smile, Dr. Martinez and his family, Vetchins who'd become like surrogate grandparents to Emma, Pastor Williams who would perform the ceremony. But it was the surprise guests in the front row that made Sarah's breath catch. Melissa, her former assistant, stood up, beaming. What are you doing here? Did you think I'd miss this? I drove down from Chicago this morning. Melissa hugged her tightly. Sarah, you look happier than I've ever seen you. Behind Melissa sat 3 more figures Sarah recognized. Board members from Wellington Foods, including Mr. Yamamoto and Mr. Patterson. We wanted to see what you'd built here, Yamamoto explained quietly. The stories we've been hearing, they're quite remarkable, and we wanted to apologize, Patterson added, for not understanding what you were trying to do back then. Sarah felt tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. You don't need to apologize. You were protecting the company. We were protecting profits, Yamamoto corrected. You were protecting something more important. Before Sarah could respond, the string quartet, 4 high school students Jake had taught basic car maintenance to, began playing processional. Emma skipped down the aisle first, scattering rose petals with artistic abandon and stopping to hugh guests along the way. Then it was Sarah's turn. She'd chosen to walk alone, not because she lacked father figures, but because this moment belonged entirely to her and Jake and the choice they were making together. As she moved between the chairs filled with friends and neighbors and found family, Sarah felt the weight of her past lifting away. Jake waited at the front with Pastor Williams, his face radiant with joy and love and wonder. Emma stood beside him as the official flower girl and ring bearer and general supervisor of proceedings. Dearly beloved, Pastor Williams began, "We are gathered here today not just to witness a marriage, but to celebrate a love story that has transformed not just 2 hearts, but an entire community." The ceremony was a blur of traditional vows made, personal, of promises about partnership and family and building something beautiful together. When they exchanged rings, Emma insisted on holding both their hands, making it clear that this was a family commitment. "You may kiss the bride," Pastor Williams announced, and Jake did sweetly and thoroughly while Emma cheered and the crowd erupted in applause. But it was during the reception, as Sarah danced with her new husband under the stars, while Emma spun in circles nearby, that the moment she'd remember forever occurred. A small figure appeared at the edge of the dance floor. A calico cat with long whiskers sitting up straight like royalty. "Princess Whiskers," Emma shouted, abandoning her spinning to approach the cat slowly, carefully. For months, the stray had been getting braver, accepting food from Jake and Emma, but never quite ready to be touched. Tonight, perhaps sensing the celebration and love filling the air, she allowed Emma to pick her up. "She finally trusts us," Emma whispered, cradling the cat gently. "Daddy always said, trust takes time, but it's worth waiting for." Sarah looked around at Vicini. Her new husband and daughter, the community that had embraced her, Phoebecinus they'd built together, the cat who'd finally found her courage to join the family. "Yes," she said softly. As Jake spun her under the autumn stars, "It's definitely worth waiting for." As the evening wound down and guests began heading home, Sarah found herself standing once again in front of Morrison's Auto Repair, now Morrison Wellington Auto and Distribution Services. The neon sign cast a warm glow over the empty lot where her Mercedes had broken down 15 months ago. "Any regrets?" Jake asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Sarah leaned back against his chest, watching Emma chase fireflies in the gathering. Dusk. Princess Whiskers following at a safe distance. "Just one," she said. "What's that?" "I regret that it took my car breaking down for me to find my way home." Jake chuckled, his breath warm against her ear. "Maybe that's how the best love stories work. You have to get completely lost before you can be found." Emma ran over slightly out of breath and glowing with happiness. "Mama, Sarah, Daddy, I caught 3 fireflies, but I let them go because Princess Whiskers said they looked sad in the jar." Princess Whiskers talks now, Jake asked solemnly. "Of course, she says lots of things, mostly about how happy she is that we're all a family now." Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, still wearing her wedding dress, but not caring about grass stains or wrinkled silk. "What else does Princess Whiskers say?" Emma leaned inconspiratory. "She says, families aren't just about being related. They're about choosing to love each other every day, even when it's hard." "That's very wise," Sarah said, her voice catching slightly. "She'll says she's excited about the baby, but we should probably wait a little while before we tell everyone." "Sarah." And Jake froze, staring at Emma and then at each other. "What baby?" Jake asked Ed slowly. Emma giggled. "The one that's going to come later." Princess Whiskers's very good intuition about these things. As they walked home together to the house they'd bought on Maple Street, with its front porch and backyard, and room for everyone to grow, Sarah marveled at the perfect completeness of her life. She'd started this journey as a successful but empty executive, chasing achievements that never quite filled the loneliness inside her. Now she was a wife, a mother, a community leader, and a businesswoman who measured success not just in profits, but in the number of people she could help, employ, and serve. The little girl who believed in fairy tales had been right all along. Sometimes when you least expect it, someone promises to fix your broken-down engine and ends up fixing your broken-down heart instead. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that someone comes with a 5-year-old wise beyond her years and a calico cat with excellent intuition about love, trust, and the beautiful complexity of families created by choice rather than chance. As Sarah tucked Emma into bed that night, her new daughter looked up with sleepy eyes and said, "Mama Sarah, I'm really glad your car broke that day." "Me too, sweetheart." "Me too." Outside, autumn was giving way to winter. But inside their home, everything was warm and bright and exactly as it should be. Princess Whiskers curled up at the foot of Emma's bed, purring contentedly, while Jake and Sarah stood in theaterway of their daughter's room, watching over the small miracle of their unexpected family. The fairy tale was complete. But the real story, the daily choosing of love, the building of dreams, the raising of a remarkable little girl who believed in the power of kindness, was just beginning.